I didn't know how I was going to cope another year. My whole identity was being this successful rower. I was willing to do everything it took to win Olympic gold. The competition, the performance was all going really well, but then my internal side was struggling. I didn't know who Zoe was without success on the world stage because that was my whole life. I didn't have a good relationship with my body. I saw it as something that was frustrating because it wouldn't do what I wanted. In my mind, the Olympics was going to be this life-altering, self-worth filling. One day I was just regular Zoe, the next day my whole life would be transformed. I wasn't myself, I didn't feel like myself, I didn't like who I was. And I just looked at the scales and I just don't want to do this anymore.
My name is Kyla Colbin. You're listening to my interview with Zoë McBride, and this is the Hunger and Heart Podcast. Enjoy the show. Hello, my name is Kyla Colbin, and welcome to episode 27 of Hunger and Heart, a podcast on the intersection of wild ambition and fierce compassion. My guest today is Zoë McBride. Zoë is a double world champion in the women's lightweight single scull rowing. She held the world record in the lightweight single scull and is only the second New Zealander to win a double national championship in both the lightweight and premier single sculls. Zoë stepped away from rowing in 2021 and has been open about how the need to make weight took its toll, not only on her body, but also on her soul. In our conversation, Zoë shares her heart-wrenching journey openly. Her hope is that it might be useful for anyone else facing similar struggles. So here you are, my conversation with Zoë McBride.
I'm happy to discuss anything. I've talked about a lot of it, and I think a lot of my learnings can probably help other people. So I'm more than happy to expose parts of those, I guess, if it gives someone else someone to listen to about a situation they might be going through, because I think that's something that I didn't have, is hearing someone else's story. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that generosity. Yeah, it's super meaningful. So I wonder if we could start with, for folks who are tuning in, who maybe are not as familiar with your story, we're about to have a conversation about ambition, compassion, life. We're going to go to all sorts of different places on, what it means to be hungry for world-class status and how to take care of your own soul in the process. I wonder if we could start with you giving us some context of your story so that we can contextualize the conversation we're about to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a elite rower. I started rowing when I was 14 years old at high school in the Dunedin Harbour. So I think I must have really loved rowing because Dunedin is not warm, the harbour is not friendly, and I went for countless swims in my first year. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just loved rowing. There was something about rowing. I'd done so many sports growing up, and there was something about rowing that, yeah, I loved. And so I competed through high school. We had a really small school team, which worked out really well for us. I think we had a really committed coach he gave everything to us. He was an amazing coach. We had just a few of us. We had an amazing group dynamic, I guess. We had an amazing friendship. And so we had so much fun in the sport. And I think that's what allowed me to, one, succeed and then also keep going, because I wasn't part of a program that was really results driven. We were really fun based, to be honest. Like, we worked really hard and we trained hard, but we had so much fun. And so I think that whole base and the love of the sport was just built on for purely the love. And so I went through high school. I was pretty successful, like nationally, made junior New Zealand teams, went up to under 23 New Zealand teams, where I guess I entered the lightweight category. So most rowing events are the open weight. It doesn't matter what size, shape you are. If you're a good rower, if you can move a boat, you're in the boat and you're in the team. Lightweight had that added layer where to race on the start line, you had to weigh in 2 hours before your event. You could be a maximum weight as an individual, and then your crew had to have an average weight as well. So I guess it just adds a complexity of juggling weights, juggling, you have to, as well as focused on performance and training and racing, you have to also think about what is my body doing? How is my body going to be at weight? Am I at weight? Do I need to make some adjustments? So I entered that at under 23 level, and with different partners over 2014 and 2015, we won the lightweight double. Moved into elites, and then spent 6, 7 years in the elite program.
I'm gonna ask her. I feel like there's more to this story. I wonder if you could flesh that. Keep going.
I entered the elite program in 2015, so that was quite a cool year for me. I was able to do the lightweight single, which is a non-Olympic event, but it was in the elite program, and also the under 23 lightweight double. So I had a couple of major competitions that year. I won the lightweight single that year. In 2019, my doubles partner and I had a kind of a mixed bag, I guess, as we were finding our footing in the elite category. The New Zealand lightweight doubles had always historically been quite successful. And so I think we, at the start, came into the double with the expectation that we had to perform. And I guess the expectation that we put on ourselves that the New Zealand lightweight doubles have done really well in the past. So it's our duty to uphold, I guess, the standard, which we found that pressure could feel quite a lot. And I think we made it external pressure. And so in 2019, with the help of a new coach, we kind of flipped the script, and it became a really internal drive to see what we could do with the boat and with the seats, regardless of what had happened before us. And I think that mindset shift was really important for us, rather than trying to reach for something that was kind of pushed on us. It was more, let's go train really, really hard and work really hard together and see how fast we can go together. So 2019, we were undefeated, came out with the world champ title and the Olympic qualification. Yeah, which was amazing.
Amazing.
And looking back on it, like it was our most successful season, yes, but it was also just that mindset was so awesome, and it just felt like we made the boat move so fast because I think we found the fun in sport again. I think it's really easy when, you're a professional athlete and you're living, I guess, your childhood dreams of being a professional athlete, but it's really easy to lose the fun along the way. And it becomes a job because
It is a
you're
job.
training really hard and you do have expectations from your sporting body to meet their own performance criterias, and there's medals that people want you to get. And so it can become a bit, you can lose the love of it, I guess, sometimes. And I really found the love of it again that year.
Can
So
I
that was
ask, can I ask some questions
yeah,
there?
yeah,
So, thank you so much for this context. And I have so many more questions because I know that lots happens after this. So,
yeah.
story is nowhere near over for sure. So my first question is coming right back to the beginning. You started rowing in high school.
Mm,
And you said, I heard you say, you weren't sure what you loved about it, but there was something that you loved about it. And, I do want to dig. I know you said you're not sure what you loved about it, but I am curious, like, were
mm.
there things that specifically that you could point to? Like, was it the isolation? Was it the sound? Was it the physical movement? Was it that you felt powerful at it? Were there things in
Yeah.
there that you can point to that kind of lit you up? Is there anything in there that you feel,
Yeah, I think
connect with?
rowing is this really amazing sport where even when you're in a team boat, it's so individual within a team as well. Because as a team, you're on a body of water which is unpredictable. You have no idea what the wind's doing, especially in Dunedin. There's swell, there's waves, um, there's a whole lot of environmental conditions out of your control. And in my case, where I spent a lot of my time in doubles, so there was just two of us with two oars, and you're trying to get the timing and the synchronicity of a stroke. So your blades in together, your blades out together, and trying to, I guess people have described rowing as it's a bit of a dance because you are those like the end of the stroke and the start of the stroke is very much about timing and placing things together. And when you place your oar in together and you push together and that whole movement flows together, there's just this amazing feeling of the boat just moving, and you work hard, but you're getting what you put into it. I think it can be really easy if your timing's not right, or you can overwork a boat because you have to also be delicate with it whilst putting in a lot of power. And so I think it's that you do the same stroke over and over and over again just for those tiny tweaks to make a boat feel light underneath you, and to make, yeah, to feel like you're producing power that's propelling the boat forward. So I really love that. I guess a stroke is so simple and it's so predictable, but it's also, you can fine tune it so much, and every coach gives you a different perspective on a stroke as well, which I think is really cool, because you can get really stuck in your ways. Like anything, when you do something thousands and thousands of times, it's imprinted in your brain, and a different coach can give you a different perspective, which, I think reflects into life so much as well. It's, um, yeah, a really beautiful idea. So I love that. I love working as a team. And I also just love training really hard, which I think rowing allows you to do. You go out there and you work really hard, and you bury yourself on the water some days. You clock up Ks and Ks and Ks. And I think there's something really satisfying about rowing. And I also found this in the single, that my results were a product of what I put into it, because it was just me out there on the water. And yes, there's also the conditions, and who can battle the conditions and cope in the conditions and adapt the best. But also, if you work really hard, you're going to see the results of that, because you can get to the start line and you can say, I've actually done everything I can to get to this point. And there's that confidence knowing that you've done harder sessions out on the water in a build 3 training week or something. Yeah, so it's that ability to have both a team sport and an individual sport in one, which I think is a really cool challenge.
I love it. There's so much in there. It's so clear. There's the team sport and the individual sport. There's never a perfection, constant tweaking, etc. And there
Mm,
is the potential for those moments where it all just comes together and the boat seems to just fly, even though you're
yeah,
putting in all this power. It's so beautiful. That comment about all of your prep leading to the moment on the starting line. I used to be a boxer, and in boxing we would say the more we sweat in the gym, the less we bleed in the ring. I
yeah,
had that thing of going, I've been through all the hard yards, so that when I come, this is just an extension of a
yeah,
place that I feel confident in.
yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times, your coach right at the very beginning. One of the first things you said was you had this extraordinary coach who really
Mm.
gave everything. What did he do? It was it he or she? Sorry.
Yeah.
What did he do? What was special about him, about how he showed up, about how he invited you to perform?
He
What was his name?
his name was John. Yeah, he was a bit older. He wasn't paid as a coach. He volunteered. He rowed his whole life at high school. I think he won the Māori Cup. Yeah, he won the Māori Cup when he was at school. So that's the boys eight winner at Māori Cup. And so he had a very fond just memories and experiences of rowing. And he showed up for us, and we rowed through the rowing club because our school didn't have a program, and he took 3 of us from my school. There was one boy from another school, and he just coached us. He didn't ask for anything back. He did so many hours. He put a lot of thought into what he was doing. He would give us a training program to follow, but then he really wanted to get, our boat setups right. So each boat you can tweak to, I guess, fit an individual depending on your height and your wingspan. And if you're rowing with other people, it's getting, I guess, lengths and angles right. So you're trying to get the stroke as in time as possible. And he did so much research on um, how we could work our combinations. He looked at, I guess, like rowing New Zealand and what they were putting their girls at. He did so much. Um, he put so much thought into what he was doing. He drove us to every regatta. He, yeah, he would work on boats for so like right up. He'd clean our boats. I think it was just all those little things around just being on the water training. You could just tell that he really, really loved rowing, and he was just really happy to have a group of people that wanted to learn from him. He wanted to learn himself. He was always, I guess, taking advice from other coaches. He'd always be talking to other coaches in the boat park. I remember when I came back from my first year in the junior team, so I had another school season after that, and we talked about how we trained in the junior team, and I guess some group pieces that we did each week and how we could work that into what we did just within our school program. And I think, yeah, he just loved the sport, and he loved doing what he did, and us being successful was like a really cool byproduct of that. And I think just a byproduct of his passion and that he had the time to give to us.
What a beautiful story, Zoe.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for telling me about him. It sounds, if I had to summarize everything I'm hearing you say about what he did, it was that he showed up with
Mhm.
A, with love, and B, with attention, with care to go, what is, like I'm going to be awake to every moment of this, to what do they need? What can I
Mm.
learn? What more can I do? How can I really be present to what's going on right here? Which
Yeah,
is, what more could you wish for from a coach? How beautiful.
absolutely. And it never felt that there was that huge, huge pressure to perform, I think.
Mm. Can we stick with that for just a moment? Because I heard you say that when you first started, you were able to work with John and first, Kate the Mihikiakwe. John, thank you so much for showing up the way you did for young Zoe, and I'm sure for so many other young rowers. Beautiful. I heard you talk about how much fun it was. I heard you talk about your coach heading into the 2019 season, and who was your coach at that point?
James Coat. Yeah,
James.
we had Gary Hay and then we switched to James Coat. Yeah, just with
Yeah.
new boats that were brought in. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I heard you talk about James Coot and say that James came in and said, we're going to shift our kind of definition of success. We're going to, make ourselves freer to think about the way that we want to show up. And that what I heard you say is it became fun again, that sometimes these things can become less fun.
Mm.
I'm a little bit familiar with your story, but I'd love for you to provide as sufficient context for folks listening who aren't as familiar. I know also around that time and subsequent to 2019, rowing, there was an aspect of rowing certainly that turned a bit dark for you. How does the
Yeah.
way that James created that freedom and that fun for you, first of all, can you describe a little bit what I'm referencing for the folks who don't know what I'm referencing? And then
Mhm.
how did that experience with James reconcile with that journey that was not as uplifting for you?
Yeah. So I personally definitely found that mindset shift in 2019 really helpful for me. I am very hard on myself and have very high expectations. And I think it can be really easy to get stuck in a rut sometimes. And I guess it's like talking about the technique. You have someone new that gives you a new perspective, and it's not flipping the script by any means, but it's giving you a different perspective on the same thing. And I think when you can be in such a small, I mean, there's two of us in the boat, and then you've got a coach, and sometimes when it's that really small group, you just need to change it up sometimes, like anything. And so James, I guess his philosophy was very simple: is we just go out there and we work hard, and we take away the fluff. We just take away the fluff and we just go out there and we row and we work hard. And I think simplifying it like that was really easy because I love working hard. And so I could get on board with that. I could be like, yeah, I'm going to do more than anyone else is going to do. And I'm going to get to the start line, and we're going to get to the start line, and we're going to be confident that we have done just as much, if not more, than anyone else. And That doesn't sound like fun. It certainly there was a lot of weeks that weren't super fun because we trained so hard. But I think for my doubles partner Jackie and I, it probably just took away the doubt of if we were doing enough, or the doubt of what if, because I think we knew that we were doing a lot, and our our training partners changed. We were training partners with the women's double who over a 2K race are 10 seconds faster than us. So every piece, every long piece, we were trying to hold them off, not let them catch us. So that became this really beneficial training partner for us to see how long can we hold them off today, or can we maintain the same distance between us today? And I think, um, yeah, whenever you're training with someone that is better than you, it lifts the standard for you and it lifts the standard for them. And I think we just had such a great combination there because we were able to really help each other. And so, yeah, that's where the mindset shift, I think, flowed into our competition, because instead of asking how much can we hold off the women's double today, it was like, how fast can we go on the water today? It was that very same mindset, instead of, and we were used to being in situations where that double was right beside us and there was pressure beside us. I think we probably as a crew hadn't been in that environment before where we had that crew right beside us, and that's because that is stressful, because that can make you doubt yourself, and that makes you think about the pain that you're in and wonder if you can withstand it longer than the crew beside you can. And so that whole season allowed us to be in that pain bubble all the time and be confident that we can stay here for a really long time. And so that season was really, I think there's two very different aspects, or two very different balls that I was juggling throughout that season, because the competition side, the performance side, the training side was all going really, really well. But then my internal side, my for myself, was struggling because being a lightweight, having to make weight, I think every year that started to eat away at me a little bit more, because there's just that focus on your weight and your body and how your body is showing up and what weight it is, rather than just being able to freely fuel for what I was doing. I was so focused on trying to stay this same Zoe as I was 5 years beforehand.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that process, what that process of making weight?
Yeah, so making weight for competition would, I guess, I could sit between 1 and 1.5 kgs above weight the week leading into competition, and then I would dehydrate and sweat, 24 hours beforehand. We'd suit up in our jackets and our thermals and our hoodies and sit on sweat bikes, or sit on bikes and sweat for 15 to 30 minutes. And over the course of 24 to 30 hours, I could make weight. You'd go to weigh in dehydrated, eating just, bland food that wasn't going to hold any water, weigh in, and then you'd rehydrate and fuel before you race. And when you're competing over a week, so that can happen 3 or 4 times in the week. So there's definitely a really big mental aspect of that, because sometimes it feels like you're not guaranteed to get on the start line. Like you have to pass this obstacle and this barrier to get onto the start line. And I remember there was times in some seasons that I would feel jealous of other rowers that didn't even have to think about that. They could just show up to competition week. They'd be really excited going into World Champs or World Cups because it was their chance to race. And I had this added heaviness of, I have to make sure that my body's going to make weight. And so over the years, I found that got harder for me and it got heavier for me. And I think my solution, we had teams around us and nutritionists and things, but I found it really hard to talk about. And so I would project that I was fine and coping with it fine. And I guess over the years, I ate less and less going into competitions, and I would eat at the minimum I could so that I would survive training and make it through training, but then keep my body at a lower weight because I was scared of my weight going up because of what that would mean getting closer to racing. So I developed a really unhealthy relationship with the scales, with my body, with my weight, with, yeah, I guess it was an eating disorder that was masked by the demands of being a lightweight because you had to make weight. So I guess bodies became, yeah, like just part of being a lightweight, and food became a really hard area for me. So I I never really experienced any physical until like my last year, but I never experienced any physical or like performance um like symptoms of underfueling, and so I wasn't fueling my body as well as I could, but I still performed really well. So I think it was easy for me in some ways to justify what I was doing because my performance hadn't taken a hit and I was still showing up. I was completing all the sessions. I was performing as well as, an open weight rower. Like I was competitive with them, and in 2017 I won the open single at nationals as well as the lightweight single. So I was competing and competitive with those girls. So there was no red flags, I guess. And so I think that was a little bit dangerous for me because I'm someone that goes all in, and I was willing to do everything it took to win Olympic gold. And because I wasn't suffering, I was like, it's obviously okay then, like I'm managing this and I'm not doing any damage because my results are showing me that. Um, yeah, so we got through the 2019 season, and all this was also weighing on me in the background. So I had this amazing season and we were having a lot of fun with it and performing, but at the same time, it was like this heaviness inside me was really hard to get through. So we qualified for the Olympics at the World Champs, and then a countdown kind of started in my head that year. I was like 12 months to the Olympics. 12 months, I can hold on for 12 months, and then this is like I'm done because I knew that, yeah, that was what I had left in me, and I was going to do that because I was going to go to the Olympics and I wanted to, I guess, tick off the one um, competition and then hopefully put ourselves in the position to win gold. And so, yeah, I had that countdown in my head, and then as everyone knows, 2020 gave us a curveball that no one could have expected, and a product of that was the Olympics being postponed. I remember lying in my bed that day and I saw the news. I think someone might have texted me, and I looked and read the article and about how the Olympics were not going to be on. There was talks whether it would be postponed, what would happen, and um, oh yeah, all I thought about was, oh, I just wish they'd been cancelled. And as soon as I had that thought, I was like, what? Like, I didn't know where that came from, and it felt really a horrible thought because I was like, how can I think like that when this is my lifelong dream? That's something that I've put years and years into, and my first thought is, I wish they had cancelled it. And I know that that came from a place inside that was really struggling to hold on, that knew like that any longer was going to be too long. And so we had training through lockdown in that period. So we trained at home, trained in our garages. And that was really, really hard for me because I felt like my heart wasn't in it. And I think that was because I didn't know how I was gonna cope another year. Because at that point it looked like it would be postponed a year out, which it was. So 6 months became 16 months or 18 months. Yeah, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 months out, became 16 months. And that was a really scary place for me to be in, knowing that I wasn't, what I was doing wasn't sustainable. And I didn't know where that left me because my whole identity was being this successful rower who was just on the path to the next step of achievement and success, I guess, as an athlete.
Thank you so much for sharing this story. And again, I know there is more to come in terms of the timeline, but I have some
Mm,
questions about this sort of phase of it. And so the first thing I would say is I heard you say that um, this there were no impacts kind of on performance at this point. I heard you say this is an eating disorder. What I hear is this is a sanctioned eating disorder. It's one that is fully supported and expected. And when we get further down the story, I know there was at least a couple of physical impacts that I'm aware of, a stress fracture, amenorrhea,
yeah,
of that. But you started to become aware that this was not okay maybe before there were the physical kind of symptoms of it. And so
yeah.
my question there is, so you said it took a mental toll, it took a physical toll, it took an emotional toll. My question there is, what were the things inside you? What happened? What did you notice that prompted you to this awareness that this isn't sustainable, that this isn't okay? Like, how did it feel? What were you going through emotionally to get to that realization that you couldn't keep going?
I'm not sure when exactly I was aware. I think I always knew that being a lightweight was starting to take a toll. Or, yeah, it's really hard to pinpoint because I think for a lot of my lightweight career, there was definitely aspects that weren't healthy. And I guess it starts from having to be constantly aware of your weight and manipulate your weight. That's something that our bodies have their set weights and then added on top when you're an athlete, you're trying to be in your best physical condition. You lift weights to get strong but all alongside that we're trying to get as strong as we can and be as fast as we can, but then we're also trying to pull our body down to a certain weight. And um, it's not that my body was that far off it for a long time, I think. Yeah, it just was this added element. And I had a friend who I had a really good friend. She's still one of my best friends now, and she was in under 23s, and she was someone that I was able to talk to about weight a little bit because she found that she was getting injured and ended up um, stopping. She stopped rowing because she just found that the toll was really heavy on her as well. And so I think I knew that I manipulated food. I knew that I manipulated my weight, and I knew that that wasn't something that I wanted to be doing forever. And I didn't have a good relationship with my body. I didn't see my body in a way that I was grateful for. I saw it as something that was at times just frustrating because it wouldn't do what I wanted. And so I think all along, like I knew that I didn't feel good and I didn't want to feel like this forever. So I think that was probably with me for quite a long time. And I didn't want, and sorry, I'm trying to like figure. I knew that as the years went on, my perception of myself got worse. I didn't have any self-love. I got my self-worth and um my identity from my sport. And yeah, I didn't want to have that relationship with myself forever.
I heard you say you've got this, you're going through all this in the background while you're performing and projecting that everything is
Mm.
fantastic. When did you first start talking about this? Who did you tell?
I didn't talk about it for a really long time because I was scared that if I talked about it, there's no going back. And so I think that fear stopped me for a really long time. It's it makes me feel a little bit emotional actually because I didn't think that I was allowed to talk about it. I didn't know what was wrong with me and why my body was the way it was or why I was struggling with these things when no one else seemed to on the outside. And I think that's the really dangerous thing about when people have struggles and in sport because you see the good, you see the success, and I think the narrative is changing now, but I think even when I was in the high performance system, that you didn't want to show weakness. You didn't want to show that things weren't okay because there's always someone nipping at your heels, wanting an opportunity. And so I think holding that in feels like the safest option, even though it's just something that's bubbling away and getting bigger and bigger. I think I properly first started talking about it with my doctor. So in 2020, as I mentioned before, we were training at home in our basement. I got a stress fracture in the neck of my femur from running because that was a CrossFit activity that I'd chosen to, or a cross training activity that I'd chosen to do alongside the erging and the biking. Um, and yeah, the stress fracture happened maybe 3 weeks in. And this is an injury that happens when you run Ks and Ks and Ks. And I was probably doing a couple of Ks a week or a couple of runs a week. And so that was a really big first warning sign. And so I had to get, I didn't see my doctor for a while, but I remember when I did see him, he was really amazing at just making sure that I was gonna look after my body first before I thought about getting back in the boat because I couldn't walk, I couldn't get on the rowing machine, I could barely do anything with this injury. And even still, when I got this injury, I was like, I remember my thoughts was like, how am I going to keep my weight down if I can't train for hours and hours a day? And even then, it still took me quite a while to look at my situation from a perspective of like, are you okay? And I kept trying to push through. And I think for me, pushing through hard situations is how I succeeded as an athlete because every day you've got a test and you push and you push and you push and you get through the other side. And so that was how I treated this as well. I was like, I'm just going to keep pushing through it. Mental health, keep pushing through it. And so, yeah, my doctor, he was really amazing. He was like, I'm not going to push you back in the boat. I know that your coach wants you back in the boat, but we're not going to put you back in until you're ready. And then so I had him who really felt like in a high performance system, he cared about me first and the Olympics second, which at the start I found that strange because I was like, doesn't everyone care about the Olympics first? Because in my mind, the Olympics was going to be this life altering self-worth filling. One day I was just regular Zoe, the next day my whole life would be transformed. I guess that was what I had sold myself on, what the Olympics would promise me. So he didn't seem to care about that. And alongside that, we discussed going to see a psychologist out of the sport because I just felt like I needed someone to talk to that didn't know who Rome was, wouldn't look at me out on the water and then maybe telling them about how I was really, really struggling with XYZ. I needed that separation. And I think because I was so young when I came into the Royal New Zealand system, like right out of school, I'd never had that separation. Everything, because Royal New Zealand is a centralized system, like you live with rowers, you eat with rowers, you bike to training with rowers. So everything was rowing involved. And I just needed someone that didn't care about rowing in some ways. So I had a friend who recommended a psychologist that she had seen, and he was amazing because I could just talk about everything and anything, and I didn't have a fear that someone in the building would find out because he didn't know anyone in the building. So those two people were quite impactful on starting to pull the threads, I guess, in terms of what I was doing, how I was doing it, why I was doing it, and starting to question, I guess, yeah, it started for me, it started to open up that question of what am I doing this for? Am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it because it's expected of me? Am I doing it because I think it's just something that I need to do that will give me XYZ or fulfill me? And so those were the people that I could start being really honest with. But even then, I still held a lot back. I held a lot back for a while because I was scared of, yeah, I was scared of once I spoke some things out loud that you can't take that back. And then that's when you're starting to acknowledge the truth to yourself as well.
Yeah. Once we say them, they become real, even though, of
Exactly.
course, they're real already. But once
Yeah,
we say them, it almost removes the excuse
absolutely.
that we give ourselves. Like, I don't have to actually engage with this as long as I haven't said it out loud.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once I'm acknowledging it, I'm giving other people an insight to that. And
Mhm.
it's also not, I think I wasn't ready to fully acknowledge it myself. I
Mhm.
wasn't ready to open up another conversation. Um, yeah, I needed to work towards that myself.
Following conversations with your doctor, with your psychologist, at what point did you make the decision to step away?
So I think my femur fracture probably happened April-ish, 2020. I was out of the boat for, I think, 5 months in total. Part of me was scared to get back in the boat because I had just felt this, yeah, I was scared to get back in the boat. And I don't know why. I think I was scared of having to train again for the Olympics a year later. I was scared of, yeah, I was scared. And so I started to get back in the boat. But during my leg recovery, I had come to the realization that if I was going to go to the Olympics, I had to do it better and I had to look after myself better. And I didn't want to be in that place that I was when the announcement came out about the Olympics being postponed because I could look back and see that I was a shell of myself, and the thing that was holding me together was the dream of a gold medal. And so during that time of recovery, I worked really hard on eating more. My partner, who I'm still with now, he was a really big impact on that because he was in the program as a rower, a male rower. He was in the eight squad, and they just ate to fuel their body and recover their body. And so there was a really long time that I just let him make me food, and he served it up for me, and I ate it. And I think taking that weight off myself, in hindsight, I didn't realize how much of an impact it had in the time, but it just took the thought of food out and what was going into food. That was on him. I don't even think maybe he realized what he was doing at the time, like how big it was for me, but it was really, really big, and it just allowed me to focus on healing. We went for like lots of bike rides together when all I could do was bike, and I feel like I was slowly rebuilding my relationship with food, I don't want to say my relationship with my body because that took a really long time, but I was on that path. So I got back in the boat. I raced over summer. I didn't weigh myself. I took the scales where I didn't weigh myself for a really long time because I just knew that I had to get healthy. I needed to get rowing again, and then I would deal with it when it needed to happen. So got through the summer season, and then it must have been January or February, and the selectors, because my doubles partner and I, we were pre-selected for the Olympics because we had had such a successful run. There wasn't really any other lightweights around anyway. I was in that fortunate position that I could take the time with my recovery as well. That is definitely an added element of it that I didn't have to rush back into the boat. I didn't have to rush back into being at the top of my game to secure my seat. So yeah, we had that throughout summer. I knew that I was just in like a base rebuilding phase. And the selectors had pulled me in February and said that in May I had to be at race weight for none other than the fact just to see if I could make it, basically, is what reading between the lines. When the Olympics weren't till August, and I always found it really hard to speak up to the selectors. I guess you feel like a little kid when you're in that position because there's a couple of them in front of you and they call the shots on everything. And I remember leaving that really feeling upset because it felt like one, they didn't trust me after being their top lightweight for years and years and years. And then it just added this extra pressure onto me to be at race weight in May, 3.5 months before I actually had to be there. And so, yeah, that started, I guess, I suddenly had to switch on to what I was doing, what my weight was doing, what my body was doing. It felt like I had to dive back into that and start losing weight again. Because I probably I had a bit of weight to lose. It wasn't a hit, like it wasn't anything. It was yeah, maybe 5, 6 kgs, which that was doable. A lot of lightweights were in that position in the off season, but because of where I had come from and what I had spent the last few months rebuilding, it felt like I didn't have a solid base to hold myself steady on that. I just dove straight back into the weighing myself and thinking about what I was eating and stressing about the days, weeks that I had left to get to this weight. And it just went from no noise to 100% noise again and took up all of my brain capacity. So I spent a really good few weeks starting to lose weight, talking to my doctor about it. We were talking about how I could do it in a healthier way. And it felt like to me that this was my opportunity to do it right. And if I couldn't do it right, then that was, I guess, where that thought started that if I couldn't do this in a way that felt healthy-ish, because I don't think losing weight like that is ever healthy, but it was, like you kind of mentioned before, I think for some people, not all people, but for some lightweights, it's an eating disorder in disguise. Um, yeah, so I was working with my doctor, trying to lose weight, and I just felt myself spiraling back into the person that I was. And I think now that I had got to a point where I was healthy, I started to notice my mood decreasing again. I felt more depressed. I think I was on antidepressants at the time as well because I wasn't myself. I didn't feel like myself, and I didn't like who I was. And I remember standing on the scales one day, and I think I'd lost a little bit of weight, but not what I had hoped. And I just looked at the scales and I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't have the energy, the capacity, or the desire to do this anymore. And I'd still been working with my psychologist at the time. I had given what I felt like was everything. And I just, I think for the first time, I felt compassion for myself and the thought that a gold medal is not going to change me. If I feel like this on the road to trying to, if I feel like this on the road to the biggest competition of my life and I'm not going to enjoy this competition or I'm not going to enjoy this process, I'm not going to wake up the next day and feel like a different person. All my issues are still going to be there. There might just be a bit of metal beside me. And then I thought about young girls that might look up to me, say we were to be successful, the young girls would see this photo of me smiling, representing my country. But then if they knew my story, is that what I would want them to aspire to be? And it wasn't. And I think, yeah, I'm not sure at the length of time in which I thought about this, but and I thought about if I was to have a daughter and she asked me about my Olympic journey, what would I tell her? Because I was embarrassed. I didn't want to feel like I was okaying mistreating your body for a goal. Um, and all those, I guess those pieces kind of came together, which I guess had been in the background for a few months, but they all came together. And I think I had a doctor's appointment that morning, and I drove down and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he was the first person I told, other than my partner. I talked about it with my partner for a little bit. And, he was like, it's your decision at the end of the day. And people are going to love you whether you go or not. And I remember having that same conversation with my psych and, the weeks led into it, that you're not going to lose friends, you're not going to lose family members because you don't achieve a specific goal. And if people really care, then they're probably not the ones in your corner that you should have in your corner anyway. Yeah, so it kind of was just a realization standing on the scales that it just wasn't serving me anymore. And I think that was
How
the
did
first time in my whole rowing career that I had put another decision or another part of me above the drive to win.
how did the conversation go with Jackie?
It was really, really hard. I was, yeah, that was a really tough conversation because I think that's why I stuck at it for so long and tried for that whole summer, for the weeks leading into trying to lose weight again, because I didn't want to let her down and I didn't want to let my coach down. And I guess that's the hardest part about being in a double in a team sport, is that it's not just me. It wasn't just me. That was our goal to go to the Olympics. It was our goal to win. And so it was horrible going and knowing that it wasn't just my dream that I was going to let down. Um, yeah, there was, a lot of really hard conversations, but I had just gotten to the point where I couldn't do something for someone else anymore, no matter how hard it was going to be to have to tell those people it's not just about it's not just about making someone else happy. I had to also make sure that I wasn't going to damage myself, and that was her main thing as well. Like it was really hard to have that whole year changed, but she didn't want me to damage my body, and she didn't want me to be so put myself in a position just to go to the Olympics either. And I know that roles reversed. I, it's never worth sacrificing yourself for a goal. Um, there's sacrifices you do have to make, but to fully sacrifice, I guess, your soul, is a different story. And so, yeah, there was a lot of tears and conversations and, but I just had to put myself and my health first in that situation. Yeah.
I really want to highlight a couple of things that are coming through for me from what you're saying. One is when you talk about having the women's doubles as a race partner and how much they pushed you because they could be, up to 10 seconds faster over 2 kilometers. And you talked about the ability to be in that pain bubble. And one of the things that we know in high performance sport is that your ability to hang out in the pain bubble, in the pain cave, is one of the things that is A, deliberately cultivated, and B, that is the key distinguishing marker of success or failure in terms of result on the
Yeah.
scoreboard. And so there's a piece there of like everything that you get taught about being able to hang out in the pain bubble is the same. You've been told this is good to develop this skill, and that's the same impulse and muscle that you deploy to be able to go, I know I'm suffering and I'm struggling and I'm finding all this really hard, and I can tough it out.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things I wanted to acknowledge. I also want to acknowledge the beauty of you coming to this realization in the first place, which is the most important realization you can have, and then the reaction you got from your psych and from others around you of actually your worth and the love that people have for you is independent of whether you win a gold medal.
Yeah.
What was that realization like?
It was really important for me. I I do believe that because I was successful from such a young age that without meaning to, I tied my identity to my sport. I tied my worth to my sport. And because it's a topic of conversation for people, you go home and you visit your parents and all their friends, everyone's so excited for you because you've won a gold medal or you're in the elite team and or you've made the Olympic boat. Like it's just it's a conversation that people want to have, and you take in those pieces of information and then you start to think that, that's how people see me. And so then how other people see you becomes, and what other people say about you becomes the way you kind of see yourself in the world. And then those comments and those praises fill up your own cup, I guess. So all that self-worth became really externally fed. And so I didn't know who Zoe was without rowing. I didn't know who Zoe was without success in some ways on the world stage, because that was my whole life. That was my whole identity. Like I mentioned before, that was who I lived with, I trained with. Everything revolved around rowing, which happens when you're in this bubble of high performers trying to achieve something that a lot of people don't, or sporting wise, that a lot of people don't experience. And my whole life revolved around it. And for me to realize that my partner wasn't with me because I was a good rower, or my parents didn't love me because I was a good rower. It sounds so simple, but you can't see that when you're so deep in that place and you're so deep in your sport, and you everything I saw through the eyes of like, is this gonna enhance my performance or is it going to detract from my performance? And yeah, it was really important for me to realize that, and this was absolutely from the help of my psych. It was from the help of a friend that I had made years beforehand who wasn't involved in rowing. Like they weren't friends with me because of rowing, or my psych helped me realize that, my values and my who I wanted to be wasn't just Zoe the rower. And really trying to pull those pieces of identity and who you are outside of sport allowed me to have that realization, um, because I had to see myself as a person who rowed rather than the rower who was, yeah, if you understand that language there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do a lot of work with the Crusaders. We have a program called the Crusaders Leadership Program, and one of the 4 modules on the program is person first, player second.
Yeah.
So you're a person who happens to row, as opposed to
Yes.
a rower who happens to be a human being.
Yeah.
Um, I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, but I do have a couple more questions if you're willing.
Yeah, of course.
So you mentioned you didn't know who Zoe was, who wasn't the rower.
Yeah.
You've been 4+ years out of the sport now. Who is Zoe if not the rower?
I think I'm still figuring that out, which is a lifelong journey. And I didn't know that. I thought I was supposed to know everything. So when I finished rowing, I definitely felt lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I could separate myself. It took a really long time. And then I realized that, my ambition, my drive, that those were elements that I could take into other parts of life. And it didn't just have to be rowing related and performance related. So I went back to uni and I did a post grad diploma in psychology, which I'm wanting to continue further. I really want to, I guess, give back to sport in a way and through my lens of, I guess it's similar to you know, it's not just sport related, it's how can sport complement your life and how can I help other athletes to avoid, I guess, going down the path that I did, which was, yeah, and not a worst case scenario, but I think I got so deep that I didn't have that guidance or that other perspective. So, yeah, sports psychology and that whole area I really love. And I think it's really nice to see sport from a different side, still be involved because I love rowing, I love sport. And just because my journey ended the way it did doesn't mean that I can't still be involved in some way. Ian and I also both coach rowing, which is really nice to see that perspective. So we've coached at Christchurch Girls, and I love being able to pass on rowing knowledge as well as my own personal experience and like that psychology knowledge. And it's so fun to coach girls that love rowing. You know, they join rowing because they really like it. They want to work hard, and it's really fun to be on the other side. We also have two little people now, two little kids, which is really amazing. And having a daughter as well myself, it really, I guess, helped that old thought that I had when I was going to retire that I wanted to be the best role model for her. And I think, yeah, I can kind of see that now play out and how lucky I am to be able to be in a position where I really pushed my body really, really hard, but I've been able to look after it and bring it back to a place where I was able to have kids and lucky enough to have kids. And yeah, so I think life is like ever evolving and ever changing, and I wouldn't change my journey because I think I've learned some really valuable lessons that I can help pass on to other people. And success isn't just an Olympic gold medal. Success is so many different things. And yeah, I'm coming to see that even still now, I think the further away I am from sport, the more proud I am of what I achieved because I achieved a lot. I did achieve a lot. And also the decisions that I made, and that I was able to make decisions like that because I think, you know, often you leave sport on a good note because you did everything you wanted to do, or you leave because maybe there was injury or you were raced out of a seat. And yeah, I feel really proud that I was able to, I guess, take that last decision into my own hands and yeah, prioritize my own body and my own mental wellness. So yeah, I love life, and I think, you know, old me never thought that you could do anything better than the Olympics, but you can. And now it's like a small part of my journey, but I've done things that, you know, might seem just every day, but that gives me so much more fulfillment because yeah, it's more in line with like I'm in a place where my mind and my body and you know I'm present and I'm grateful and I'm that self-worth isn't reliant on someone else telling me that I'm good enough.
Amazing.
Mhm.
You've done a whole heap of work to reimagine your relationship with your body, to reimagine your relationship with success, identity. You have a daughter now. You're an ambassador for Recovered Living New Zealand. My final question for you is, you know, what would you want your daughter and her generation and, you know, young girls coming up, what would you want them to understand that you feel like you didn't get the opportunity earlier on in this journey to understand?
That your body is your body for life and your mind is your mind for life, and it can do some amazing things for you, but it requires you to look after it as well and to listen to yourself and to listen to your heart, because you do know what you need, and your body knows what you need, your mind knows what you need. And I think the external noise is so big, and we just need to surround our girls and our young people and the people that are really positive influences and aren't trying to change them, because everyone is so uniquely special and has their own unique perspective and on the world. And my daughter, she's 2.5, and she's just like, she's pure emotion, they're pure joy, they're pure anger, they're pure stubbornness and drive. And I don't want that to be squashed to try and fit someone else's ideal or someone else's idea of what she should be. Um, so I think it's looking after yourself and honoring yourself, and it's okay that you don't look like XYZ, or it's okay to have your own path, and it's also okay to want to win an Olympic gold medal. If that's what you want, then I'm gonna support them, but it's not okay to give everything to a point that you're hurting yourself, or you're damaging yourself, or you're damaging your relationship with yourself to try and achieve something. It has to come from a want within you and a want to look after yourself, rather than someone else's external want of you.
Beautiful. What a powerful message. What I hear in there is there's a thing there that, like, it's not that ambition is bad. It's that, am I doing this because this is me expressing myself and my potential, or am I doing this because other people have expectations and I don't want to let them down? And so even though I have to sabotage or sacrifice myself, I'm still going to hear this, and that only comes from the kind of incredibly honest and powerful work that you've clearly done with your psych, with your partner, with your doctor, with your coach, with yourself, with your partner, all of those things. That's where that comes from. And I just want to mihi to the agency that you showed. You mentioned that the way that people leave sport can be, a bunch of, like, get forced out, or, age out or race out or whatever it is. And for you to take control of that narrative for yourself, what a beautiful act of agency and power. And I just really want to mihi to you for that.
Thank you.
Zoë, this has been an incredible conversation. I am so grateful to you for spending the time, for your honesty, for your generosity. I know that there will be so many people listening who will take so much away from this. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. What a gift, and an absolute delight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to share my story in a space that you've created.
My absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I need to take a deep breath. What a journey Zoë has been on, and what an extraordinary act of generosity to offer that journey in the hopes that it might be useful to someone else who may be facing similar struggles. One of the comments that really stuck out for me was about the way she had connected her self-worth to winning gold at the Olympics. This is something that comes up over and over again. It is such a big risk with high performers, and so important to keep reinforcing the message that rowing or rugby or cycling or whatever it is what you do. It's not who you are. Thanks again for listening. Please do let me know your feedback. You can reach me on hello@kylakolbin.com. And of course, like, subscribe, follow, let the algorithm know you're enjoying the podcast. It makes a massive difference to us and our ability to bring you guests like these every week. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Hunger and Heart is brought to you by the Crusaders Leadership Programme. Whether you're coaching under fives or a professional team, we all want the same thing: to build a culture of trust, to get the best out of your people, and to grow players into leaders. The Crusaders Leadership Program lets you get up close and personal with some of the greatest rugby legends of all time. People like Sir Wayne Smith, Sam Whitelock, Kieran Reid. You'll connect with a global group of ambitious, caring coaches from a range of codes and backgrounds. And most importantly, you'll gain skills and techniques to drive impact and outcomes for your team. The Crusaders Leadership Program is a 2-week, high-intensity virtual experience. It is delivered exclusively online accessible from anywhere. Hunger and Heart listeners get 10% off the full price of the program. Use the code HUNGER at checkout. You can find out more about the Crusaders Leadership Program at crusadersleadership.com. That's crusadersleadership.com. Hunger and Heart is created by BOMA and the entire BOMA team, including Tito Bernal, Ray Jangle, Hannah Hudson, Johanna Coxon, Sunil Unka, and me, Kyla Colbin. Thanks for listening.